But no sooner had the sticks got fired than tiny little men came out of them, just the same as on the household hearth. They skipped out of the fire and all around in the snow, and the sparks flew about them in all directions into the night. The poor old woman was so glad she could almost have cried for joy, because they had not forsaken her on her way. And the tiny little men crowded round her, laughed, and whistled. "Oh dear, tiny little men," said the mother, "I don't want to be amused just now. Help me in my sore distress." Then she told the tiny little men how her silly son had grown still more bitter against her, even after he and all the village had come to know that his wife truly had a serpent's tongue. "He has turned me away. Help me if you can." For a while the tiny little men were silent. For a while the little shoes tapped the snow, and they did not know what to advise. At last Tintilinki said, "Let's go to Stribber, our master. He always knows what to do." And at once Tintilinki shined up a hawthorn tree. He whistled on his fingers, and out of the dark and over the stubble field there came trotting towards them a stag and 12 squirrels. They set the old mother on the stag, and the tiny little men got on the 12 squirrels, and off they went to Stribber's forest. Away and into the night they rode. The stag had mighty antlers with many points, and at the end of each point there burned a little star. The stag gave light on the way, and at his heels sped the 12 squirrels, each squirrel's eyes that shone like two diamonds. They sped and they fled, and far behind them toddled the daughter-in-law and her husband, quite out of breath. So they came to Stribber's forest, and the stag carried the old woman through the forest. Even in the dark, the daughter-in-law knew that this was Stribber's forest, where she had once before been enchanted for her sins. But she was so full of spite that she could not think of her new sins, nor feel fear because of them, but triumphed all the more to herself, and said, "Surely the simple old woman will perish in this forest amid all the magic." She ran still faster than the stag.
The stag carried the mother before Stribber. Now Stribber was the lord of the forest. He dwelt in the heart of the forest, in an oak so huge that there was room in it for 7 golden castles, and a village all fenced about with silver. In front of the finest of all of the castles sat Stribber himself on a throne, arrayed in a cloak of scarlet. "Help this old woman, who is being destroyed by her serpent daughter-in-law," said the tiny little man to Stribber, after both they and the mother had bowed low before him, and they told him the whole story. And the son and the daughter-in-law crept up in the oak, and looked and listened throughout a wormhole to see what would happen. When the tiny little man had finished, Stribber said to the old woman, "Fear nothing, mother. Leave your daughter-in-law. Let her continue her wickedness until it shall bring her again to the state from which she freed herself too soon. As for yourself, I can easily help you. Look at your yonder village, fenced about with silver." The mother looked. Oh, it was her own native village, where she had lived when she was young. And in the village there was holiday and merrymaking. Bells were ringing, fiddles playing, flags waving, and songs resounding. Cross the fence, clap your hands, and you will at once youth. You will remain in your village to be young and happy once more, as you were 50 years ago, said Stribber.
At that, the old woman was glad as never before in her life. She ran to the fence. Already her hand was on the silver gate, when she suddenly thought of something, and asked Stribber, "And what will become of my son?" "Don't talk foolishness, old woman," replied Stribber. How would you know about your son? He will remain in his present time, and you will go back to your yacht. You will know nothing about any son." When the old woman heard that, she pondered sadly, and then she turned slowly away from the gate, went back to Sribar, bowed low before him, and said, "I thank you, King Lord, for the all kindness you would show me, but I would rather live in the mystery and knowing that I have a son, than have the all riches and happiness in the world, but forget my son." As the mother said this, the whole forest resounded. It was the end of magic in Sribar's forest, because the mother preferred her sorrows to all the joys of this world.
The entire forest quaked. The earth fell in, and the huge oak, with its castles and its silver-fenced village, sank underground. Strieber and the tiny little man vanished. The daughter-in-law gave a shriek, turned into a snake, wriggled away down a hole, and mother and son were left alone, side by side in the middle of the forest. The son fell on his knees before his mother, kissed the hem of her garment and her sleeve, and then he lifted her up in his arms and carried her back to their home, which they happily reached by daybreak. The son prayed God and his mother to forgive him. God forgave him, and his mother had never been angry with him. Later on, the son married that poor but sweet girl who had brought the tiny little man to their house. All three have lived happily together to this day, and Tintilinki loves to visit their heart in winter evenings.